To recognize that we are on the unceded traditional territory of the Hupetchesed and Sachot First Nations. I'd like to call our meeting to order for the regular council meeting of Monday, October 23rd, 7 p.m. in City Hall Council Chambers. Councilors, any late items? City Clerk, any late items? Then I'd like a motion that the agenda be approved and as circulated.
I'll make that motion, Mr. Mayor.
Second, Mr. Mayor.
All those in favor? Carried. I'd like to first recognize Freeman of the City, Donna Brett, with us this evening. And Council, before we start, I would like to, as has been the tradition this fall, read some historical notes as we head into a formal celebration of our amalgamation of twin cities of Port Alberni and Alberni. In recognition of this 50th anniversary of the 1967 amalgamation, the Alberni Valley Museum, on the recommendation of the Alberni Valley Heritage Commission, has prepared these historical notes. They are for presentation at our City Council meetings during September and October in our lead up to the actual amalgamation date, which is this Saturday, October 28th. These notes offer a snapshot of what was going on 50 years ago in the Twin Cities as they were preparing for amalgamation in 1967. The information comes from 1967 editions of the West Coast Advocate and the Twin City Times, as well as other documents from the Alberni District Historical Society Community Archives. Amalgamation Week, October 20th to 28th, had many special events, including a dog show, concerts, and fireworks. Teachers and school children were given previews of Echo Center and Pool, and tours offered of the new Public Works Yard, police station, and fire hall. Some of Canada's top swimmers gave demonstrations at the new pool. On October 27th, 1967, Echo Center was officially opened with a banquet, dance, and ceremonies, including the placing of a time capsule to be opened in 2067. Well, we're halfway there. The official amalgamation ceremony was at the ADSS Auditorium on Saturday, October 28th, including the final meetings of the former city councils in the installation of the interim council, Mayor Les Hammer, Deputy Mayor Fred Bishop, and Alderman J.R. Dalton, J.A. McPhee, and G.G. Reynolds of Port Alberni, and J.C. Williamson and C.M. Blair of Alberni. Premier W.A.C. Bennett participated in the ceremonies. The newspapers also amalgamated, as the Twin City Times bought the West Coast Advocate to become the Alberni Valley Times, with the first edition published on October 28, 1967. The amalgamation of the Albernis attracted national attention as the first such event in Canadian municipal politics. Prime Minister Lester B. Pearson and Governor-General Roland Michener sent letters of congratulations. Michener wrote, "In these times when division and disunity seem to beset the world, your decision to amalgamate is welcome evidence that in your part of Canada there is an interest in broader areas of cooperation and unity." Interesting. In light of what we see around us and around the world, Port Alberni becomes this beacon. Very interesting times. Council, we have, if you recall at our last meeting, just a quick note, at our last meeting we had a letter that we talked about at the beginning of the council, and then there was some concern that perhaps we waited for a long time for that response. We are going to be seeing that response today. Certainly, Mr. Smith knew coming into the meeting that he would be getting a response to that, to his letter. So my apologies if the public didn't think there was a response coming, but there certainly was intended that there would be that response. And we, as I say, we see it today. Council, we have the minutes of a regular council meeting held at 7 p.m. on October 10th. A motion to adopt those minutes would be in order.
So moved, Mr. Mayor.
I'll second that, Mr. Mayor.
All in favor? Carried.
Mr. Mayor, just if I could, I'd like to once again note, we don't see anything in here about budget, and we did discuss it at our last spring. After our last budget, we're going to start in October. Now we're kind of finished with October, so I'm just hoping we can get her done. I actually changed vacation times or planned vacation times around, starting it early.
Right, I think CAO will have a comment on that a little later on. Council, that brings us to the public input period. It's an opportunity for the public to address council on topics of relevance to City Council. Maximum of 4 speakers for no more than 3 minutes each will be accommodated. Anybody wish to address council? Yes, Mr. Anderson.
Neil Anderson, Carmichael Crescent. I don't get up to talk on many issues that you might not agree, but I do get up to talk many times on the same issue. And it's because it's so hard to get clarity at times on the issues you're trying to address from council. Last meeting I asked a question regarding the warranty repairs that have been done on the running track at Bob Daly Stadium. My question was fair and a simple one. Are all the repairs to the track now complete? First, I want to apologize for allowing my frustration to get the better of me at that meeting. I should not allow my frustrations with council to control my emotions, and I apologize for that. Again, my question, are the repairs to the track complete? I asked the question because I knew that they were not. There were 3 possible answers to my question. No, yes, and I don't know. I did not get a no, because if I did, I would have said, thank you very much, I'll wait, and I would have sat down. I did not get a yes, and there is a difference between a response to a question and an answer. And after hearing the response, I made a reasonable assumption that the answer was, I don't know. Now, this discussion has been going on for almost 5 months since Mayor Rattan first brought it up, asking about the warranty time. The council has been unable or unwilling to answer questions directed to them regarding the track repairs. Just one example of what I mean about frustrations experienced by people getting up in order to get a straightforward response to simple but important questions. Thank you to Mr. Ply and Rob, I believe it's Godrolt, I'm not sure if I'm park supervisor, for meeting me the next 2 days later, I believe it was, at the site, and Bob answered all my questions and all my concerns that was not available at these council meetings over a period of 4 months. The only people that were not informed, that I believe, after that meeting with Mr. Ply and Bob was the general public and city council. The reason I bring that, this track resurfacing cost the city over $600,000 of tax dollars. I pay over $3,000 in total taxes a year for my place. I would expect that council would have shown a little more interest and concern over the premature breakdown of the membrane. I asked council at the mass meeting, I think I directed it to Mr. Ply, if someone would come to the track and I'd show them my concerns. That happened afterwards, and again, thanks to Bob for his response. And no one on the council volunteered to come and look. Mr. Sovey did call me the next day, and we went around, and Mr. Paulson showed up. I don't know if it was planned or not when I was with Mr. Ply and Bob. And so I don't know whether we still meet. Unfinished business, I want to bring this up. Unfinished business is where responses are given to questions asked under question period. It is not a correspondence for action. And so I'm hoping that if the question was asked here, that the response to in Bob's letter will be conveyed at this meeting too.
We have the letter where it's on our agenda.
And it's in the computer for people to look at. Many of our citizens don't have access to computers, but they are aware of the question. Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else wish to address council? Then council, that brings us to delegations. And our first delegation is the introduction of the new operations commander from RCMP. And it's Inspector Brian Hunter.
Thank you, Your Worship, Council. Yeah, it gives me a great pleasure this evening to introduce to the community our new Staff Sergeant, the Operations Commander at our detachment, Terry Smith. He'll come up here in a few moments when I call him up. But he started here in September, and I got to tell you, we are very fortunate in this community to have Terry on our team and working in our community. He has 27 years experience. His last position was island district-wide, up and down the island, being a subject matter expert with major crimes and assisting other detachments in that regard. He was the operations commander for the island in regards to those serious types of offenses. He's worked in many, many municipalities, and rather than me describe those, I think it'd be best if maybe Terry, if you want to come up, introduce yourself to the community, and once again, he is a solid member, and I'm very pleased that we have him in the community, and we're very lucky to have him. Terry?
Thank you. Welcome, Terry.
Thank you. Thank you, Inspector Hunter. Like Brian was saying, first of all, I'm more the strong silent type, like any good partnerships. So you'll find that there's a big difference between Brian and myself, which I think is good. And that's probably why we work well together. I have a good background, I believe, in policing. I started off in Manitoba, worked there for a number of years, and hit the Lower Mainland, and then for the last 15 years or so, I've been on Nanaimo, Parksville, Alert Bay, Courtenay, and now Port Alberni, and I look forward to working with all of you. And so far, my experiences in Port Alberni have been great. People are friendly. The detachment's a good place to work, and I'm just happy to be here. If you have any questions for me? Welcome.
Welcome, Terry. It's definitely lots for you to do. Hopefully there's no major crimes that you're dealing with right now, but at least there's lots to do. I'm sure Inspector Hunter will help you keep very, very busy here.
Thank you.
You found a place to live, all that kind of thing?
Right now I'm living in Parksville. My kids are in high school, and I always told them I wouldn't move them when they're in high school, and they're in grade 11 and grade 12. So once they're out.
Okay.
Empty nest.
Empty nest. They're holding you to that promise, are they? It's not far to Parksville.
No, not at all.
Okay. Anything else, Council? Councillor McClellan?
Yeah, I'd just like to welcome you to our town and hope you can move here. And but while you're in Parksville, maybe you can do something to help us improve that highway. You got to do it all the time. And just curious, I see your position is Ops Commander. What does that include?
That includes all the watches, the general duty cars, members that are out doing day-to-day policing, general investigation section, all the serious investigations that are ongoing.
So you kind of give everybody their walking papers or their orders, like?
Pretty much, yeah.
So there's a few people in town that are doing stuff we would prefer they weren't, and pick up all the drug dealers, and we'll be very happy with you.
We'll do our best.
Well, the previous speaker promised me. I'm still waiting.
Okay.
I won't make promises I can't keep.
So you keep very silent. Okay. Thank you, Terry.
Thank you.
It's nice to welcome to Port Alberni. Councillor, next delegation is Tom McAvey, Alberni Wrestling. Welcome, Grandpa McAvey.
Thank you. Yes.
Congratulations.
Exciting couple of weeks. We're 9 days into our first grandparenting. Thank you, Mr. Mayor and Council, for allowing us an opportunity to speak tonight. I'll introduce a couple of our wrestlers here in just a second. I know that you're well aware of our program, and many of you have been big supporters of our program over the years, and this is an exciting year for us as we move along. My 39th year with our program, and we feel that we have been able to represent our community with pride and do our part for developing healthy young people. I know you're aware of our book that I presented to Council, which I know is now in the library. I'd like to mention that this book, and for those in the public, is now in the BC Sports Hall of Fame, as well as in the Canadian Wrestling Hall of Fame. So the history of our community and our program is well documented. And we're taking another step this year, hosting our 5th BC High School Wrestling Championships, March 1st to 3rd. I know Council has a copy of my letter, but bear with me for a few things that we're proud of. Number one, I always want to acknowledge that we're most proud of the work we do in developing healthy young people and the work we do in being ambassadors for the community of Port Alberni. But in terms of hardware, which sometimes is easier to get press on, we have had 368 athletes placed in the top 6 in the province in the last 35 years, 76 BC high school champions, 45 national champions, and I could go on, and of course, we add to that an Olympian in 2008. We have hosted the BCs 5 times. This will be our 5th time, I should say. We will be hosting over 120 schools, over 600 athletes, males and females, March 1st to 3rd. The first day, the Thursday, will all be at ADSS with the medicals, weigh-ins, and all the various things that have to happen in preparation. And then, of course, we've moved back into the multiplex, which we departed from a few years ago for our invitational because we wanted to be connected to our brand new, beautiful high school. But this tournament is much larger, over 600 athletes, so we're back at the multiplex, and we're excited to be doing that. You see a picture on your wall over there. That was one of the first tournaments we hosted at the multiplex. It's a phenomenal facility for us, and on March 3rd, the afternoon of March 3rd, we will expect to fill that facility and have a very, very exciting afternoon from 2 o'clock till 5 o'clock. We hope that many or most or all of the council will be able to be there and help us with medal presentations. And Mr. Mayor, if you can have on your agenda, if you're available or a delegate, to help us with the opening the previous day, we'll look forward to having you there. We are running, it's be about a $55,000 budget to host this event, most of which comes in entry fees and sponsorship, but we have already had a commitment from the Alberni-Clayoquot Regional District. We do have an application into the Community Investment Program, which we hope will be successful to help us with those costs, and we have had conversations with numerous others. At this time, I would like to introduce our 2 athletes and give them maybe a minute or two just to say something about their careers and their goals for this year. Aaron Badavinik is grade 12, and Paige Marr is grade 9. This is a big year for Aaron and for both of them, but I'll let them tell you a little bit about themselves.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and City Council. My name is Aaron Badavinik. I started wrestling in grade 6, and I'm here in grade 12. This is my last year. I'm super excited to wrestle in front of the hometown at BC's. I've never wrestled in front of Port Alberni in such a big tournament. I'm just super excited. I just finished wrestling at the Canada Games, and there's a lot of energy there, but nothing beats wrestling in front of a hometown, and I'm just super excited to be able to do that. So, you guys have any questions? Or
Where were the Canada Games held, Aaron?
they were held in Winnipeg this year.
Okay.
So
And when did that happen? Sorry?
that happened August 1st to 12th, I believe, were the dates. So
I know wrestling is a big commitment on your part, but it's also commitment for your whole family, right? You
Yeah.
can't do it without
yeah,
support?
I'm super lucky. My family's awesome. When I traveled to Winnipeg, both my mom and my dad, as well as my Nana Lynn, came and watched me compete, and that really meant a lot to me. Having that support is the key to success. You can't do it without them.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Aaron.
Thanks.
Anything else, Council? Paige?
Do you wrestle with your brother?
Cousin.
Cousin? Your cousin? Just
I wrestle with both my brother and my cousin. Nolan's wrestling up at SFU, so he beats me up a little bit. But I still got a few tricks up my sleeve for Paige.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and Council. My name is Paige Marr. I'm in grade 9, And I'm really excited for us to be hosting provincials because I know last year was my first opportunity to compete at provincials. And every time I stepped on the mat and saw the home crowd, it was very exciting, and it's really different than seeing everyone you don't know. It's going to be really nice to see a crowd full of people that we do know. Yeah.
So when you practice at ADSS, or do you practice your wrestling at ADSS, or you
Yeah.
practice somewhere else?
At ADSS, yeah.
And where do you practice?
We have a room that we share with the drama club.
Oh, yeah. Great room, isn't it?
Yeah.
Sort of like a third gym. Okay.
I'd like to just acknowledge that Aaron is returning provincial champion. So he's in his grade 12 year, set his sights on a second championship and no doubt a future in the sport at the scholarship level, at the university level. Paige really took the province by storm last year as only a grade 8. And remember, the high school championships are grade 8 to 12, and Paige was second in the province last year as only a grade 8. So I know she has high expectations here as well, as do all of our team. I mean, there's no secret when you bid on a provincial championship. You bid in a year that you hope you have the team that will star in front of the home crowd, and we've been fortunate to do that a couple of times. I'm not making any promises here today, but I can guarantee you, when the province wrestles against Alberni, they talk about the X factor, and the X factor being those intangibles. And our belief is those intangibles are the culture of our program, which stems from the culture of our community, which is hard work, dedication, effort. So we look forward to having support of council in the city, March 1st to 3rd. Any questions for these two stars?
Good luck, and enjoy the moment.
And Tom, without a doubt, you've got the support of the council and the city, and always have had.
You're well.
You run an incredibly inclusive program, and there's all sorts of young people who have done so well in life that Port Alberni doesn't have a group of people known as the wrestling mafia for nothing. So it's interesting to me how we have all of these business people in Port Alberni who have a very strong connection with one another, because as teenagers, they got that connection through wrestling. So good for you for creating such a powerful organization.
Well, thanks, Mike, and we appreciate that. And it's been something that we worked at, and we're very proud of our alumni, and they do number in the thousands now.
Yeah. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And Council, that brings us to our third delegation, which is from the Heritage Commission.
Thank you very much.
Welcome,
I just
Pam.
can't resist putting on my trustee hat and saying the two young people that were here, Paige and Aaron, are making our current history for us. And I'm here tonight to talk about our heritage. And I would like to thank the Mayor and Council for giving me this opportunity to speak with you. And I'd also like to thank you very much for acknowledging the Commission's Historical Notes series at each council meeting in preparation for our 50 years as City of Port Alberni. And thank you very much in your intro mentioning my father, Mr. J.A. McPhee, who was a member of that council. So it is the way this community goes around. We are all still working hard. And I'd like to acknowledge some of the commission members that are in the audience here tonight. If they could just raise their hand a little bit and let everyone know that these are members of the Heritage Commission who work very hard for our community. And they represent the heritage and culture advocates and the historical knowledge base of our community. The commission has 16 members from many interest groups in our community, as laid out in your bylaw 4687. And we meet regularly on the first Wednesday of the month, and minutes are taken and sent to council. As per your city's bylaw 4687, the Heritage Commission exists to advise City Council on heritage matters affecting the city. Under the bylaw, the Commission ensures that the real, accurate story/history of our community is preserved and protected for the future, and that it is also properly presented to citizens and other public audiences. The Commission fully supports the bylaw as it believes in the inherent duty of the citizenry of today to appropriately preserve and protect that heritage. This collection is of considerable monetary and social value. The sacrifices and efforts of our founding citizens calls for respect and care from our community today. Among other things, our history fosters a sense of identity and civic pride, both important components of the fabric that holds our community together. Authentic collections and knowledge also provide the base for distinctive heritage attractions, known to be of great importance to cultural tourism. The official community plan for the City of Port Alberni demonstrates the official city commitment to heritage values. Under Goals and Objectives 1.5, Heritage, the plan states: 1, to preserve and protect buildings and features and artifacts that have heritage significance for current and future generations. 2, to showcase the Alberni Valley's rich heritage in forestry, fishing, agriculture, and First Nations for citizens and visitors. Now, the Commission works very closely with the Alberni Valley Museum staff and the museum manager, Jamie Morton. And I've asked Jamie to come tonight just to tell you some of the key contributions and initiatives the Commission has put forward to aid him in his work at the museum. So Jamie has a list of a few things that we have been directly involved with. So Jamie, if you could come forward and just give councillors that list.
Thanks, Pam. Mr. Mayor, councillors. The list grew when I started doing this. I was told, well, come up with 5 ideas, and it expanded a little bit. The Heritage Commission has been active over about a 20-year period that I'm aware of, that I've been indirectly involved with it or directly involved with it. And some of the things have been larger policy, direction, steering kind of efforts. One of these was the initial overture to get McLean Mill set up as a National Historic Site. A lot of the people, some of the individuals that are here tonight actually representing the Heritage Commission, were involved in that initial effort in the 1990s. It's remarkable that they've stuck with it the length of time that they have. Some other examples of things like that they've been involved in were putting together the idea of the Heritage Network. Now, this was a cultural tourism initiative. It was to have the 4 historic attractions in the region basically working together under the umbrella of the AV Museum at that time for promotion, for marketing, etc. The buzz line was 4 big attractions in 1 big day. The idea to keep people here, retain cultural tourists in the region, fairly successful. Another one that I was directly involved in was putting together the Alberni Valley Tourism Strategy. This is what ended up being set up as Tourism Alberni Valley, or Alberni Valley Tourism, eventually under the auspices of the Chamber. It kind of has morphed and changed into something quite different. But again, it was an attempt to try and pull together cultural tourism, outdoor recreational tourism, whatever would bring people to the area, sports tourism, anything that would bring people here and keep them here in the region. Sort of a one-stop shopping model was what we were looking at with that thing. They also, most recently in terms of policy things, have been very involved in putting together collections policy. It's one of those things, the Alberni Valley Museum never had a detailed approved collections policy, and I know you folks have been dealing with how huge the collection is, the industrial collection and so forth. Massive set of assets, and we didn't really have a professional level guideline for that. The Heritage Commission worked tirelessly through 2015 into 2016. That was finally approved. Massive accomplishment, a lot of volunteer time from these folks in putting that together in early 2016. It's a really important document to have. Some of the smaller things they've been involved in, fundraising initiatives of different sorts. There was a fairly successful series of antique fairs in the 2000s. They are usually involved at Fall Fair as volunteers, presenting the heritage recreation side of things a little bit. They more recently have been very involved with the revitalization of Film Fest. So the Alberni Film Fest has been recreated under the auspices with the volunteer effort of the Heritage Commission again. So on a lot of fronts, these things are fundraisers that support primarily the education programs and public programs at the museum. Make those possible, make those accessible to everybody in the community. There's a few other ongoing things too. The Heritage Fair every year. I know a lot of you participate in the Heritage Fair. It's really important to pull the community together in an educational context, looking at the importance of our heritage to the region. Likewise, the annual Heritage Awards we have in December, hosted at the museum, hosted by the Heritage Commission. And this is to recognize people that do make some kind of contribution in the heritage sector to the community. One of the things that Pam said, I just want to echo, what we try and do, the role of a museum is to preserve and present the heritage of a region. Both of those are really essential. You can't just preserve things whole as bolus. If nobody ever sees them, it doesn't mean anything. Likewise, there's two purposes to the preservation and presenting of things. One of them is educational, is to maintain the sense of identity in the community, why it matters, why our heritage matters, why it makes us distinct, why it makes us special relative to other communities. The other part is the cultural tourism piece. And Pam also used the word authentic. One of the things that's essential is to have that sense of authenticity, reality in the heritage offerings that are being made. I would argue that the Heritage Commission has been an essential part of sort of maintaining, fostering, driving that forward in assisting the museum, in assisting the institutions it's been involved with. It has representatives from the various groups, the heritage and cultural groups in town, also community at-large members, and two of them are here tonight, I believe. So we've got, it's been a strong force for maintaining the values of heritage and culture in the community, sense of identity, fostering cultural tourism, and I'll turn it back over to Pam with that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much, Jamie. As you see, we have a long list of things that we contribute to on a regular basis and want to keep doing that as well. But I'd like to draw Council's attention to Section 9 of Bylaw 4687, which outlines the responsibilities of the Commission. Under A, you will see it states, the Commission will advise on policies and objectives relating to the operation of the Alberni Valley Museum, McLean Mill Natural Historic Site, and other community heritage resources. The changes that Council has made to the McLean Mill management and the proposed changes to the Alberni Valley Museum have not been discussed with the Commission. This, of course, leaves the Commission questioning what role the city sees in the future of the Commission. Some 20 years, the Heritage Network has played a huge role in pulling together all historical elements of our community. The Heritage Commission is intrinsic to that process. The Council must also know the enormous economic value of heritage tourism. The Commission believes heritage tourism is a real thing. It is an entity. Our members experience it throughout the year as visitors ask questions about our historical sites, and tourists are very curious about our whole area and who we are. And thanks to the dedication and commitment of the Heritage Commission members, the preservation of the historical artifacts and documents of our community are second to none. In the last few weeks, the Commission reached out to Council with a questionnaire on the role of the Commission. I understand you've all received it and had an opportunity to look at that. And that was to gauge your understanding of the work we do and the knowledge that is available to Council when making decisions relating to heritage. So our purpose tonight is to seek some guidance on where Heritage Commission goes from here. We welcome an opportunity to meet with Council to clarify our mandate and determine how we might serve Council in the future. So I would like to look forward to hearing from Council where we can sit and have a conversation with all commissioners and all councillors just to see what you would like from the Heritage Commission going forward. Thank you very much for your time.
So Pam and Jamie, thank you very much for your presentation. you've offered a good opportunity for us as council to sit with you. I know Councillor McClement has something he wants to say, but we did begin a process. We initiated a process which is only slowly unfolding now, even though it was started virtually 2 years ago. It's taking some time to work through. Council hasn't changed that particular direction. So I welcome your invitation to get together. This isn't the venue to do that in, or the opportunity, but thank you for that.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor McClement?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, just two things, I guess. One is to thank the Heritage Commission for presenting, and there's a couple of things they mentioned, and one thing that I really enjoyed this past year was the display at the Fall Fair of the steam, and that was done probably way more than has been before, and I think it was really good. It was an attraction to that area of the fair, and it was a good, I happen to like steam, so I'm a bit prejudiced that way. And Mr. Mayor, if I may, to answer the questions, I'd like to make a motion that we request bylaw number 4687 be brought before council to review it in light of where we're going, and to discuss it with the Heritage Commission. If I have a seconder, I'll say for it.
I'll second that motion, Mr. Mayor.
So I think, Mr. Mayor, that they've come here, they've worked voluntarily for a lot of years, and they come asking the question. And I think that it is definitely something we should be doing, look over the bylaw. As you said, we've made some direction changes, but I don't think we've made a change in the fact that we think heritage is important. It's just how we're handling it.
I'd agree. Thank you. Councillor Alberni?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Pam and Jamie, for the presentation. I think it was very good. I think as a council, there has been a direction. I think that we're moving towards, but there isn't a final destination yet. And I think it's important that before we know what that final destination is, that we do have full consultation with the commission and with the broader community. So I support Councillor McClement's motion, and I think it's only a first step. And we also have to recognize, and I think Pam for bringing up that the official community plan is there, and it does very clearly have the heritage aspect in our community, and the support from the community for that. So it's an important discussion. So there will be more.
Okay. Anything else, Council? Okay. Oh, Councillor Washington.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Echo thank yous. I know I sit on the commission representing the city, and I realize we've got a direction to go in, and I'm really hoping that the direction we go along the direction we go, that we pick up the regional district, because it is the Alberni Valley, and I hope that the First Nations folks will get on board too, because it is their history too. So I'm hoping to get together as a big group of people before we finish this off. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. On the motion then, all those in favor? Carried. Thank you. And once again, Pam and Jamie and group, thank you so much for your presentation. We'll get staff to arrange a meeting, and just as soon as we possibly can. And I know that that Will is going to be part of that meeting somehow, because she's going to be looking after moving our process forward. And thank you. We need to go into it being as open and as consultative as we possibly can. We have a tremendous community here, and it's how we help one another become even better that is what makes us the way we are. So thank you.
Thank you.
Councillor Alberni.
Just one last, in the process, I think this would be a really good topic to bring to a committee of the whole meeting, so we can have that fulsome discussion, including many people in the public to be able to come forward and have that discussion.
Well, we'll see where it goes. Councillor Paulson.
I just want to recognize that we have a younger member of the community here representing heritage as well, and it's great to see that. It's not just us old fogies that like the history. So thank you for being here too. Yeah.
You know, you're only as old as you feel. It's just a surprise. Just so you know, it's a real surprise as you get older when you look at yourself in the mirror. Other than that, it looks exactly the same looking out. Okay. Thank you very much. Council, there is some unfinished business. The first one is related to access to logging roads. And we have a notice of motion that was provided by Councillor Alberni at our October 10th meeting. And I'm wondering, Councillor Alberni, do you still wish to make that motion?
I would, and I'll make it, and then I can speak to it after if I have a seconder.
Exactly, yeah.
That council for the City of Port Alberni directs staff to send letters to the Minister of Forests, private forest companies, and the MLA regarding access to logging roads and recreation areas.
I'll second that motion, Mr. Mayor.
Okay. Councillor Paulson.
I guess I agree with writing the letters, but I would really like to invite them to council to speak to the matter, to speak to the topic. So I'd rather have a face-to-face.
When you say them, who are you referring to?
Well, probably the local companies, Island Timberlands, and maybe even Western Forest Products.
Okay. Councillor McClellan.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I agree with that comment. In fact, I would like to, with the permission of the mover, have a substitute motion that we do invite not, the Island Timberlands, particularly in Timber West, to council to discuss their policies of the two private companies that are bordering on Port Alberni and pretty much have the Alberni Valley surrounded, I guess, whether we liked it or planned it or no one planned it. And so I'll leave it. I personally don't like the concept of just writing letters because, one, it gets confrontational right away. You get a letter and you don't want to see that. And the other thing is, let's find out what is, because I do know that there is a policy of access. I have actually even gone on the Island Timber blog the other day for the first time, because I've kind of don't go on blogs, take too long to find. But and they have quite a list of these places are open, we're logging here, so please don't go there. So people are checking them. Probably they could find things out. I don't like the concept of private lands. Any corporation owning as much land as some corporations do in British Columbia, and it's not just around here. There's the big ranch in the interior and things like that. So it's a British common law thing with private lands, and it's what we live with. So I think we should learn to live with it, live with what we got, and figure out how to interact. So I would like to see a motion to invite Island Timberlands, Timber West, to here to discuss their access policies and what is happening, and to hear the complaints we've had. Here there's a Facebook or something type survey out there getting people to sign it of some sort. I haven't seen it myself, but obviously people are upset with the way things are going, and I hear that a lot.
So your motion, sorry to interrupt, but your motion is to invite Island Timber to come to council?
That's the Island Timber and Timber West.
Okay, City Clerk?
That's my suggestion but it's up to the mover to.
Yeah, we do have a motion on the floor,
right,
Mr. Mayor.
So
the original motion.
I just wanted to be clear what he was suggesting.
I'm fine with amendment to that effect, so that's fine.
Okay, is there a seconder for that? Thank you.
Yeah, it's a separate motion.
Councillor Minions has accepted. Council, just a little, I know you want to speak, but just a little bit of background is that I actually did speak with a representative of Island Timber, and they're more than willing to come. So your suggestion, Councillor McClellan, is a good one. Councillor Minions?
Thanks. I was just going to ask for follow-up because I think at an ACRD board meeting they invited Island Timberlands to come. I was the alternate at that meeting, and I'm just wondering if there was any response. We were discussing the same issue, and it was quite a few months ago. So if the regional district has invited them with no successful meeting, then
I don't know if the invitation was extended, but they haven't been.
They came, Mr. Mayor, and we did a tour of the properties and,
right,
what was going on, and they came back and met, even gave us some lunch.
That's right. My apologies.
That's when they showed off the illegal dumping and the type of gates they're using and where the fire was.
And the fire on Mount Aerosmith, yes. My apologies, I forgot. Anything else, Council? So on the, Councillor Alberni.
Just to be clear, so the motion and the amendment, I think, is to send letters and to invite. Is that okay, Councillor McLennan?
As long as we're inviting them and not just saying, invite them to talk about the subject, and we're going to have to send a letter to invite them.
Yeah.
I just think if we send a letter only, can maybe put a backup. We don't need a.
Yeah. I think there is, I know Scott Fraser has already been on the file somewhat and been in contact with Island Timberlands. He said that on his Facebook page. So, coordinating with him and inviting Island Timberlands and everybody that's involved, I think, is important, just to make sure that we cover all of those bases.
Okay, I think they're keyed up, ready to come, so I don't think it would take very long to get them here. We just have to extend the formal invitation. So on the motion, all those in favor of inviting Island Timber to our upcoming council meeting? And Timber West, okay. Thank you. Motion carried. All right, then, Council, that brings us to the next item of unfinished business, and that's from the Chief Administrative Officer, a response to correspondence. Just before he starts, just to clarify, certainly in terms of the process, Council has to receive work on this, response to this. It's not something that can happen really quickly. It takes a fair amount of time. So, CAO, thank you for taking the time, and I'm confident that Roland Smith was fully aware of the process. So, I'll turn this over to you, CAO.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. If I can preface, Mr. Mayor, at our last meeting of council, October 10th, I believe, we received a letter from Mr. Smith, and there was a question during that meeting about the timeliness of the city's response, and I gave a response that was a poor response. And so I'd like to improve on that response if I can. The city gets asked questions every day. Every day, the public interacts with us about what we do and how we operate. And the vast majority of those interactions are face-to-face or over the telephone, sometimes by email, and the responses are immediate. And if they're not immediate, we check our facts and get back to the inquirer as quickly as possible. So the city makes a lot of effort, goes to a lot of effort to be very timely in our responses to the public. And sometimes people choose to engage the city in a formal way, a letter to mayor and council. And that, just by its own process, takes longer. So a letter, a written response, input to mayor and council must be received at a public meeting. And we only have 2 of those a month. So we received Mr. Smith's letter October 10th. The question came up about our timeliness of response. About 45 minutes after we received it, there hadn't been time for a response. Council needs to receive that letter and decide if council wants to only receive it, if they wish to respond, if they wish to not respond, that sort of thing. So the very earliest opportunity that the city has had to respond to that letter is now. It's the next public meeting. So, would it be nice if we could turn that around really quickly? It would be nice. But council's not able to consider and direct action except in public meetings, and we only have 2 of those a month. So that being said, that was the answer I should have given you October 10th, and I regret that I didn't give you a better answer. So, Mr. Mayor, we received a letter from Mr. Smith. You received that October 10th. And the letter posed a number of questions and comments about McLean Mill, Alberni Pacific Railway, our industrial heritage cluster, if you like, particularly around ownership of assets and city involvement. So my report to council, responding report, has quite a bit of history in terms of background, as you can see on the screen, describing how we arrived to the situation that we found ourselves in December 31st, 2016, which was the day that we terminated the McLean Mill operating agreement with Industrial Heritage Society. And that relationship with IHS evolved over many years, and for the most part, the agreements that supported that working relationship, the agreements and leases, evolved over time as well. It appears to me that they evolved as needs arose, so they weren't all written the same day, for example. So they were in some cases, I wouldn't say contradictory, but in some cases not complementary, the documents, and in some cases they were dated, and things had changed and the documents had not been upgraded. So effective January 1st, 2017, we had a new entity, McLean Mill Society, operating McLean Mill. But it wasn't as clean as just cleaving off McLean Mill from the rest of the industrial heritage cluster. Everything's intertwined. And what we found was that the most intertwined part, the most difficult part, was that IHS actually is the operator of Alberni Pacific Railway. And this is the heart, I think, of Mr. Smith's letter, is who actually owns Alberni Pacific Railway. And if there's an ownership to be had, it belongs to IHS. They are the permitted operator of Alberni Pacific Railway. So the city is not at liberty to move that over to McLean Mill Society or operate that ourselves. If we want APR to run, if we wanted it to run in 2017, IHS had to run it. So we've been developing leases and agreements and working relationships throughout 2017 to address the myriad administrative gaps that arose by interjecting McLean Mill Society into operating the McLean Mill. And we've done a lot of good work this year. There are some things that remain to be done. There's some documents that are not completed yet. And I would say the relationship between IHS and McLean Mill Society and the city has not fully evolved yet. So I don't think we're done exploring that three-way relationship. Mr. Mayor, so there's a table right there. If you look at the screen, that lists some of the administrative gaps that we created by creating the McLean Mill Society to operate McLean Mill. So we've worked through many of those, not all of them, but we're working through many of those. And going forward, IHS and McLean Mill Society and the city are committed to continuing to work through these and developing the best processes that we can. I will say, Mr. Mayor, that throughout this year, we have worked very closely with BC Safety Authority. McLean Mill Society and the city have worked, and IHS worked with BC Safety Authority to ensure that the public has never been unsafe with regard to the operation of APR. And we've done a lot of work and worked very closely with Safety Authority to ensure that. We've also worked closely with our insurers to ensure that the city has never had an unmitigated liability to do with the operation of the railway. So those two issues have not been in doubt. And probably that's enough background, I guess, Mr. Mayor. There's a number of questions and responses. I don't think you want me to read through all those, but I'm happy to answer questions if you have specific ones.
Thank you for going through all of those questions with your responses, and it must have taken a considerable amount of time just to be able to sort through all of that. Council, are there any questions, concerns? Councillor Sauvé?
First of all, I want to thank the CAO for putting all this together and the staff who assisted. I got to admit, for myself, not knowing much about railway, it was sure, I got to be polite here in public, it was sure a learning curve for me to learn all of these stakeholders and associations or committees that are all involved and all that. Personally, what I would like to see, and you know, it's just, I don't know if it's my background, but I like to stick with the facts to the point that I would like to see an organizational chart that plainly indicates to me who is responsible for certain responsibility, especially with the assets of the city. That's very important for me, and liability issues and so forth. And you explained most of them, and I thank you. It's just I would like to see it in a diagram so I know who's reporting to who and so forth. Also, I understand that we have a lot of, in reading these reports and also many other reports that are archived, that you're talking about agreements between different departments and so forth. I just want to make sure that we have updated, especially with the McLean's Mill moving into the picture. I think it's important that we have MOUs in place, memo of understanding in place, that we have agreements, written agreements. You know, it all comes down to accountability. And we have written agreements between all these different commissions as into what responsibilities and ownership is, so we got something to fall back on. Now, I trust that we do have all these agreements, but I'm questioning it since McLean's Mill has been a certain new identity into the aspect of things. I just want to make sure that we have something that shows accountability for each individual. So if something happens, I know which department or committee to go deal with. Personally, that's what I would like to see, and it'll show some accountability and transparency. And again, thank you for making up this report. It sure cleared a few issues for me. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor McClement, and did you have a question as well? No? Councillor McClement.
Thank you very much to the CAO for this response. I know it was probably took a lot of time, a little bit difficult possibly to answer it. I know I read the original letter again today, and some of it was difficult to read, I guess, types like I do, and sometimes I wonder what was meant. But the thing I guess that I'd like to say thank you that we did get these answers. I've asked some of these same questions at different times to different staff people over the years at different councils and got a different answer sometimes each time, in actually particularly who owns the railroad, who's running it. And the first time that I found out that we weren't running it was when Mr. Ply told me this question sometime a year or so ago. So it's interesting, and I'm glad that we've got it and it's written down. But I would like to just say that when council is asked questions, we go to the staff to get an answer. And when council is criticized for the answer that they get, they're criticizing our staff. And I think it's something that we should be aware of. We got to protect our staff and make sure that when we give a answer back to somebody that's asked us and we get an answer from staff, that it's that accurate.
Thank you. Councillor Minions.
Thank you. Thanks for this letter. It gives a good history and shows, I think, the complexity of the issues that have come up so far. And I think when I was reading through this, especially in reference to, or thinking about it in connection to the Museum and Heritage Commission and conversations kind of, ongoing, it really made me think that I think a lot of this comes with the pace that we often want to move with decisions like this. And, a year or 2 years into this, we shouldn't be really getting asked these questions still. We should have clear answers to them because we should have, as a council, addressed them from the start. So I think this really speaks to the part of the process that gets lost when we move too quickly, although we all like to move quickly. So anyways, in reference to the museum considerations, I think this is a good reminder for us of why we need to just take care and spend the time that we need to follow process before making big decisions. And thank you for the follow-up. And I'm thrilled with everything that's happening at McLean Mill, but yeah, it's interesting seeing more of the history.
Thank you. Councillor Alberni.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just to echo what others have said, thank you to the CAO for the report. I have to apologize as well from last meeting. I was going to say some things around this issue, and I'm glad I didn't now because there are more. There's much more information here than what I've known in the past, and it's good to have it all in one document, and it clarifies a lot of the. It's a complex relationship that the city has had for a really long time, back into the 90s, as we've heard tonight. So it goes a long way, and there's a lot. There's just a lot to it. So it's very nice to have it all in one place. So this is going to become, I think, a letter of reference almost. Maybe it should go into the museum as a historical marker so that we know where we are at this moment in time. But yeah, it's an important document. I'm glad that it's here. I think the one sort of hanging question that it did leave out was the relationship or the contract with IHS. So maybe the CAO could speak a little bit more to that, just see where we are with a contract.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, Councillor Alberni is correct. We don't currently have an operating agreement with IHS for operation of APR. So we've got all the pieces we need to ensure that they're operating safely and that without liability risk to the city. But we've traded a draft agreement, and we've not reached an agreement yet on that. And that's the primary piece for this this winter, is to get that whole piece cleaned up. Verify who's going to operate trains for us going forward, and have whoever that operator is under contract.
Okay, Councillor Paulson?
Just in response to the report, I mean, it's like a huge jigsaw puzzle. Like it's a monster. And I actually have a relative that was the president of the Canadian Railroad Unions, and I actually asked him if this was unusual. And he says, with railroad agreements, you can have a section of track where you might have 10 different proponents involved. In this case, we have, I believe, 3. And I think the end goal that we want to get to is to streamline this so there's clarity and that we can put it to bed, you know, at the end of the day. But yeah, it's not unusual for railroad agreements to be way out there.
Just as a bit of reference, I had someone say to me extremely confidently, it's easy. The Island Corridor Foundation owns everything. No, it's not that easy. It's not that simple. It's not that straightforward. Councillor McClellan, do you want to move receipt of this report?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I move that the report dated October 16, 2017, for the Chief Administrative Officer providing responses to Mr. Roland Smith's October 3rd, 2017 letter be received.
Seconder? Second, Mr. Mayor. All those in favor? Carried. Thank you, Council. And that brings us then to Park Supervisor Rob Goodrow. We have a report with information on the status of repairs to Bob Daly Stadium track. Questions on this report, Council? Then, Councillor Paulson, do you want to move receipt of that report?
Mr. Mayor, could I speak to the report?
Yes, sure. By all means.
Thank you. Mr. Mayor, we were in receipt of a report from Rob Goodrow, our Parks Supervisor. And in his report, Mr. Goodrow provides some background on the Bob Daly Stadium, built in 1992. And we got 21 years out of the first rubberized track surface. And 5 years ago, 4.5 years ago, we moved to resurface it with a budget of $636,000. And we accepted a bid from the lowest qualified bidder of $448,000, Marathon Surfaces, to undertake that work. The track was resurfaced, and over the years since then, we've had some ongoing concerns with breakdown of the track, delamination of the material. And Marathon Surfaces has gone good for their warranty and made repairs to that track. And most recently, they were here in September and did quite a sizable repair piece and a number of smaller patches. They also identified with Mr. Goodrow at the time when they were here some other areas that appear to be delaminated, small pockets, and we plan to monitor those over the winter. Marathon will come back in the spring and repair any outstanding items. The warranty expires in December 2018, so it's our intention that prior to the expiry, we'll be satisfied that the track is at that point in current good condition. And we will also, given that we've had some problems with that surface, it would be reasonable to expect we'll have more problems going forward. So we'll seek to get a voluntary extension of warranty from Marathon Services to take us beyond 2018. And should Marathon Services not give us an extended warranty, we can consider at that time what action, if any, we take. And I appreciate, Mr. Mayor, this is a concern for some in the community. We got 20 years out of the first surfacing and only 5 with repairs out of the current one. I believe we're exercising our due diligence and as best we can. And we'll continue to do that through next year.
From what Rob said to us was that he was actually addressing some issues of drainage around the track at the same time.
There's one issue of drainage, which is not Marathon's problem, it's our problem, and we're addressing that. It may have been addressed already this year. I know that Mr. Goodrow was going to work on that this year.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Sylvie?
I just want, I'm glad for the report. The only concern I had, number one, is for the request for the extended warranty. Number two, I'm glad that the city's taken a position of not signing off, and I just want to understand that I'm saying this right, that we're not going to be signing off on the warranty work until we go through winter time to see how the repairs have it done. I hate to, the fact that I went there and I went to visit, and I'm no expert when it comes to tracks, just keep that, but I just want to express that there's a few places on the tracks that I actually saw the repairs being made, but it's like they added too much material, and there's actually a lump. So, and I walk that track fairly often, and it's, you know, but again, as long as our department's not going to sign off on a warranty until it's properly inspected and all that, and I'm glad you mentioned the extended warranty, because I think it would be a benefit to us, and so thank you for your time.
Anything else, Council?
Mr. Mayor, if I could speak to that, the patches that have most recently been put on are proud of the rest of the track. They rise up just a little bit, and Mr. Goodrow tells me that's done intentionally. They put extra pile on, if you like, and that it will scuff off, and very quickly, he did one right in front of me and scuffed it off, and you couldn't tell where it had been. So that's just how it's fixed, and it'll wear in like the rest of the track.
Okay, thank you.
And there, another comment about the patches, the shape. They're random. They're not square or rectangular, so it looks a little bit hinky, if I can use that technical word. But they're intentionally random, so there's no corners that can roll up. So these folks, they know how to repair.
Was that a Port Alberni word?
That was a Beaver Creek word.
Beaver Creek. Okay. Bland Road, probably. Councillor McLennan.
Yeah, thank you. I thought Mr. Goodrow was going to be here. I had all kinds of questions lined up for him. But the only thing I'm concerned about then is that we don't pay for this extra warranty. This is work that should have been done, should have been ready now, and it's not. And I don't know if there's anyone else that would have done a better job or not, but it seems like the people we did choose didn't, and I think we're going to have to be very firm on that we want them to do what they were supposed to do.
Okay, thank you. Anything else? Okay, Councillor Paulson, do you want to move receipt of the report?
That the report from Parks and Recreation, or from the Parks Supervisor dated October 17, 2017 be received.
I'll second that, Mr. Mayor.
All in favor? Carried. Thank you, Council. Council brings us to Part F, staff reports. The first one is on accounts. Councillor Washington.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I move the certification of the Director of Finance dated October 23, 2017 be received, and checks numbering 139901 to 139980, inclusive, in payment of accounts totaling $710,737.30 be received.
I'll second that, Mr. Mayor.
All in favor? Carried. Council, that brings us next to a special economic development report from the Economic Development Manager and the Rural Dividend Program. We do have a report that was prepared at the request of Councillor Alberni. I see Mr. Deacon here. Did you want to introduce your report, Mr. Deacon? I have some halls in my pocket if you want some. Good. You're good? Okay.
I'm good, thanks. Mr. Mayor, councilors, the report's in front of you. I did take an opportunity to talk about the two Rural Dividend Program grants that we've received through the offerings, and they're pretty, I think, pretty straightforward, but I'm happy to answer any questions that are left after your review.
Councillor McLennan?
Yeah, after we're done this, what do we get? Is this going to get us another study, or do we have some investors lined up to do something at either of these locations?
So in that respect, you'll be talking about the second grant. We are in the process of, we hope, lining up investors. The intent of the business plan for the K-Tech cedar oil plant and the mass timber cross-laminated timber plant is to convince investors that a very credible organization has reviewed the feasibility of each of those projects and believes that the return on investment or capital employed, whichever term the company would like to use, is there for somebody moving forward. So we are sharing the feasibility studies as we go forward with a couple of parties that have expressed interest in those. So I'm very much hoping that at the end of the day we'll have something that will attract an investor.
If there's any contacts we have that might be interested, do we send the information to you?
Yes, please. That'd be great.
Okay.
Councillor Alberni?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, Pat, for putting this together. I know I've kind of been on you for a while about it, so I appreciate it very much. So there's these kind of three tasks that you detail, Can Timber, Ki-Tech, and then sort of the third one around Catalyst and Western. So I guess for each one, for Can Timber, looking at where they are now, sort of in a gray area, we're still not sure exactly whether they're going to be returning or meeting the conditions that they need to for PAPA. So what is what's their position as far as, when are we going to be able to provide the support? Or are we providing the support now or after they meet those recommendations?
So Can Timber has met with FP Innovations. They've also met with another company that FP Innovations have supported in a previous project. So they're taking a look at it. As the report says, we being the city of Port Alberni, have indicated to Can Timber that we won't respond to the request for provision of a natural gas fuel source until all of the recommendations that were developed by Golder have been satisfied. And the Port Authority is using a third party to vet the implementation of the recommendations. So I think at this point my place with it is if Can Timber has by a third party verification satisfied all of the other recommendations and is moving to start up, then we would release the funding for the gas connection. And it's compared to the other projects, it's quite a small ask. I think it's somewhere in the neighborhood of $30,000 or $35,000.
That was going to be my next question, so thank you for that.
Yeah.
So for Ki-Tech, you said here that the work on the task is proceeding. around a cedar oil extraction. So, what is their plan? Is it just research, or are they looking at locating in a specific area, or how far along is that? Like what process are they in?
So the plan's definitely more than research, although they have always said that if they get up and running, they propose to do a great deal of research. But there is a market for cedar oil. It's the amount that Can Timber is proposing to produce is a fraction of the market that's there. FP Innovations has been working to try and determine if the market is even greater than what Can Timber has identified, and prove that to the satisfaction of a potential investor. As far as site, their preferred site would be at the catalyst mill, because it would take advantage of the boiler, would take advantage of the water, the capacity to access power, and possibly natural gas at a preferred rate, but it really will depend on Catalyst's response to them. We've introduced KTEC and a couple of other parties to Catalyst, all of whom are interested in locating on the property for a number of reasons. Most predominantly the access to the boiler would cut their capital costs enormously. And so, for example, in KTEC's case, a $30 million project might come in at something more like $28 million with access to the catalyst boiler. That's an example. It's close to a figure, but so they, of course, when Western Forest Products ceased operations on the Somass mill site, KTEC, along with the Sang Group, along with another party that's proposing a renewable diesel plant, which is not, and that party isn't part of this project, have all approached Western for access to the site, and Western's response has been, we're in an indefinite closure period. We haven't permanently closed the site, which is aggravating and frustrating and understandable. We are with KTEC and a couple of other parties actually looking at another site that has been identified to us. It's out of the city. It's owned by a forest company. It's not currently serviced, so there would be challenges to access the site, but at the same time, I'm intent on landing one or more of these operations in the community, and by that I mean in the Alberni Valley, and hope, I really hope it would be in the city, but if not, in the community, rather than see a proven operation go somewhere else and take with it the employment and the possible tax revenue and the opportunity to utilize the residual wood. I mean, we had considered calling it the Residual Wood Initiative, because the whole effort is being done in the hopes of that none of those operations will threaten the fiber that Catalyst or Western Forest uses, and they will access the fiber that's currently burned every fall or winter or spring, much to our concern and detriment.
Thank you, and thank you for the detail. That was really good. I think, you know, one of the most I guess one of the most rewarding conversations I had at UBCM was with the Minister of Jobs and Innovation, and it was around that issue of using products in the forest in an innovative way. And it's a very important future opportunity for us and a job creator. So I want to thank you for this, and I hope you know, we can move forward on it in a way that is, number one, inclusive of all parties, and you know, takes into account any mistakes that have made in the past, you know, around canned timber or whatever that have caused concern in the community. Being able to learn from those and move on to something better. So I think you're getting there, and it's really good to see. I hope we can get some more buy-in from Catalyst and Western Forest Products, for lack of a better word, but because they're still here, and they, I would hope, should see an opportunity to be innovative and maybe start to evolve their business models to be able to take into account these kind of new and emerging innovative technologies and industries, because otherwise it's just the same old, and we know where that's going.
If I may respond, I mean, Catalyst has certainly bought into the chip trial and study in the hopes of accessing more fiber. And they have been more receptive to actually having other parties located on site in the last 6 or 8 months than they have been at any previous time in the 10 years that I've worked with the city, and during which I have taken a number of opportunities to them. But they are very receptive now. I mean, to the point where they have exchanged position papers or term papers with a couple of different parties. So that's and they've encouraged others to come forward. So that's all been encouraging. And just 2 other things, you know, I'd like to say. One is we've been determined on this residual wood front. And the work that we're doing with FP Innovations and these companies is putting us at the forefront of all the research that is being done in that area. And this is one of 6 sectors of the economy that we've really been focused on for diversification efforts. This has attracted much more attention or publicity, if you will, but we are hard at work at, you know, 5 other sectors of the economy as well. And in fact, I spent probably 3 hours today 1.5 in meetings with the regional district and one of my provincial counterparts, and another 1.5 later working on one particular sector. So we're moving on other fronts.
We've never accused you of not working hard.
Thanks.
Okay, anything else, Council? Then, Councillor Minions, do you want to move receipt of this report?
Move receipt of the Economic Development Manager's report.
All in favor? Thank you, Mr. Deacon. Council, that brings us to the current status report, page 48 of our package. Any questions, Council? Councillor Paulson?
Just a quick question. Scott is here. I'm just wondering if you've heard word if the actual sale of the Airview Hotel has gone through or not? The proponent said it would happen later that week, but...
My understanding, it is still proceeding, but has not completed yet, as of today. So I am keeping close contact on that to see what the status of that is. But as of today, it hadn't closed, but was still proceeding.
Okay. Councillor McClement?
Yes, I'd just like, excuse me, to ask about number 2. It's been there for a little while, not over a year at least, but it's to do with the museum actually, and we did have a presentation about that earlier. And it was one suggestion as an alternative as a variation of what Council was requesting and discussing last budget time. So I'm just wondering, if anything ever happened there, or is this kind of just gone? Because May the 15th, there's supposed to be a meeting arranged shortly.
Mr. Mayor.
And if nobody knows an answer, they can answer me next meeting.
And one more comment related to number 2. I think we're missing a fourth partner there that's a really critical partner, and that's the ACRD. So go ahead, CAO, just to make it easy for you.
Progress report. We had a good meeting last week with Sashot First Nation that we talked about nothing but the museum and this concept. And so I'm excited about the opportunities there. And we haven't yet scheduled a meeting with Hupechis First Nation, but we'll do that shortly.
Okay, thank you. Anything else, Council? Then, Councillor Alamani, do you want to move receipt of that status report?
That the current status report be received.
Second that, Mr. Mayor.
All in favor? Carried. Thank you. And Council, that brings us to Parks, Recreation, and Heritage, the manager's report. Welcome, Director.
Thank you. Before I review my report, I wanted to speak to the tragedy in Fernie, where 3 gentlemen recently lost their lives after a pneumonia leak. And although it may be many months before we receive insight into what happened and what sequence of events occurred, we're currently actively reviewing our ammonia and chlorine exposure control plans throughout our department, as well as involving our occupational health and safety coordinator and our fire chief. And keeping in mind that these ammonia and chlorine handling plans are both part of our ongoing procedures of day-to-day operations in our facilities, as well as the Valley Emergency Plan. Does Council have any questions about that incident before I move on?
You're a step ahead. That was my next question, so thank you.
I think we've got to wait for the findings as well.
Absolutely, yeah. And so it's really hard to, we can only really speculate at this stage, and it could be many, many months before we understand. There's over 2,500 rinks that operate in Canada, and as far as I'm aware, this is the first fatalities that we've experienced. So obviously it's a very dire situation. But like I say, we're doing our diligence here in Alberni to ensure that we're staying above board. So, related specifically to my report, per page 54 of the agenda package, you'll see the 50th Amalgamation Celebration schedule there. Thank you to Mayor and Council for those of you that are able to attend. I hope to see you with your roller skates on starting that morning. Councillor Paulson has actually talked a little bit about possibly donning some of his old wrestling regalia, I believe. And I'm not sure if that's during the roller skating period or the luncheon that he'll be emceeing. And so just a reminder to folks, I wanted to specifically key in on the lunch from the noon to 1:30 period to come and join us for a barbecue there at Echo Centre. And the second item I wanted to draw your attention to, on page 55, there's an image near the bottom of the page there. There's the pickleballers at the top. You'll see those young folks enjoying the basketball pad, and you'll see on the bottom left corner that there are push brooms and a couple of brooms on the pad. So our staff actually caught these folks in action. That it's pretty exciting to see that our youth in our community, as we were seeding the surrounding basketball pad sod there, that they took it upon themselves to bring their brooms from their homes to sweep off the debris that happened to go onto the pad there so they could play some basketball. So I consider that a pretty fantastic sign of watching our youth really embrace our local facilities. So very exciting to see, and of course now grass has started to sprout, so I don't think that brooms will be a requirement moving forward. So, and I turn over to council for any questions you might have for me.
Councillor Paulson.
Just under the multiplex concession pricing, and I don't know what your feedback has been, but as I attend Bulldog games, it's I've been whiplashed with a fair amount of negative comments, and so I'm just wondering kind of what your overall feedback has been, or is it just individuals that are hitting on me?
I would say it's the latter. So there's been potentially some grumblings, but we're encouraging folks to approach our Recreation Services Manager directly. She has not received any sort of direct feedback. I feel very comfortable with where our prices are at. I know change is a difficult pill to swallow, but I would say with the majority of the increases being 25 to 50 cents an item, I would say quite moderate at most. So I do feel comfortable with where they're at, and of course we always welcome feedback from guests, that we want to have an open dialogue to see if there's further adjustments that need to be made.
I have referred them to Lori, but obviously they didn't go that far.
Question about Canal Waterfront Park there.
Mm-hmm.
There's a pad that is in the process of being constructed, and the steel's in there obviously to support the cement when it goes in there. Can you remind me what that is going to be for, please?
Yeah, that'll be a gazebo, actually. And so that structure will take us to that next stage of offering facilities that are future. There's been weddings already in discussion in that space. So yeah, so that pad will be housing a new gazebo upcoming.
It already looks quite significantly different now than it did a year ago, so good job on that.
Absolutely, thank you.
Yeah. Councillor Sauvé?
Yeah, speaking of Canal Beach, I just wanted to recognize that the funding for the pad and so forth are coming from where?
I believe that all of the funding sources have not been divulged at this time. I'm not sure if the CAO can jump in on that.
What's the question about Canal Waterfront Park?
Yes, sir.
Mr. Mayor might have some information on some of the funding.
Yes. There is a Kiwanis $60,000 donation for this. Mm-hmm. So I really want to acknowledge and give thanks for that. You've got the work there. $40,000, I believe, is a Kiwanis grant, and $20,000 has come directly from Kiwanis. So as a city, and certainly as a region, we're particularly grateful that the Kiwanis has taken this on as a special project of theirs, because if it wasn't for their assistance, it wouldn't happen. And it is going to be significantly different by the time you're finished. So what I was wanting to get to is just if you could highlight, even though it's in your report, if you could highlight the the sort of timelines that you have in mind for that.
So we expect that with Canal Beach, really the outstanding gazebo just is pending the ability to build at this stage. So we expect that by the spring everything will be complete there. And it's been, like the mayor referenced, it's been amazing to see that transformation with the play box and with the volleyball court, and on it goes. It's been just tremendous to see.
And I can see other structures that, in future times, future grants, future financial funding opportunities that could be added to that location that could be amazing enhancement to it. So it's just really, frankly, just the beginning.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, thank you. Any other questions, Council? You also have a major project with the stadium there, the stands at Rec Park.
Yes, that's true. And so we've got the grandstands are the big outstanding piece. I've mentioned in my report a few items that are being finished up with the seating and the lighting and that sort of thing. But we're excited to know that before the end of the Christmas period, everything will be finished there.
And a major rebuild on the gyro?
Yes. Yeah, so with the currently in the current year, finishing up the basement or the downstairs area, creating a boardroom that will be available for community use, so internal and external user groups, as well as looking forward into next year into the upstairs section, so where we do a lot of our youth programming, being able to provide some TLC upstairs as well.
So all of this has been accomplished through grants and other significant additional amounts added to the city. So it hasn't been a significant cost to taxpayers.
No, absolutely. My predecessor, Director Kingston, was instrumental in some grant writing workshops with the staff, and they were able to, far before my time, were able to land a variety of grants that we can see that significant impact, that many of these projects, frankly, wouldn't exist without those grant funds. So it's tremendous to see it come to fruition. The staff is very proud of their work that they've completed, which I completely agree with. They've done an amazing, amazing job.
Yeah. Thank you. Anything else, Council? Councilor Washington, do you want to move receipt of this report?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I move that the monthly report of the Director of Parks, Recreation, and Heritage providing information about current departmental operations be received.
I'll second that, Mr. Mayor.
All in favor? Carried. Thank you. Councilor, our next report is from the RCMP detachment and Inspector Hunter.
Thank you, Your Worship, Council, for allowing me to be here this evening to present the third quarter statistics policing-wise for the city. Prior to getting into the numbers, as you recall, my last report, given the limited number of meetings in the summer, it was well into July. In fact, I think it might have even been August. So I reported on some summer events that had taken place up to that time, and giving kudos to the organizers, because we had 0 calls for service from the public in relation to those. And since then, of course, we've had a couple more events in the community, including the 2 big ones, the Toy Run and the Salmon Fest. And once again, no calls from the public, no files received in relation to those. And those are large events with liquor licenses. So I just want to give a shout out to the organizers of those events. It really makes our job as police officers that much more enjoyable on those weekends. We do have extra staff in place just for the added people in the community. But it was more of a social thing, going around to the beer gardens and saying hi to folks and that sort of stuff. So definitely a job well done by the organizers. So this report is for the activities that occurred in July, August, and September of this year. We responded to 2,655 calls for service, and that's within the city limits. 2,655 calls for service, and that's within the city limits. 2,655 calls for service, and that's within the city limits. 2,655 calls for service, and that's within the city limits. 2,655 calls for service, and that's within the city limits. 2,655 calls for service, and that's within the city limits. 2,655 calls for service, and that's within the city limits. 2,655 calls for service, and that's within the city limits. 2,655 calls for service, and that's within the city limits. 2,655 calls for service, and that's within the city limits. 2,655 calls for service, and that's within the city limits. 2,655 calls for service, and that's within the city limits. 2,655 calls for service, and that's within the city limits. 2,655 calls for service, and that's within the city limits. 2,655 calls for service, and that's within the city limits. 2,655 calls for service, and that's within the city limits. The number of criminal offenses remained about the same as last year. We were down in some categories and up quite a bit in property crime. Property crime is up to 345 reported events for this quarter compared to 287 for the same period last year. And I'll get into the numbers. Break and enter, shoplifting, theft from vehicles, and fraud seeing the largest increase. Property crime increases are definitely indicative of drug use, people that are addicted to drugs and other substances, and you get also a correlation in there with poverty, mental health, and homelessness. And it's certainly an indicator that our property crime has gone up significantly. That's the highest it's been for this quarter in the last 9 years. 2008, 2009 is the last time it was that high. The detachment has 26 chronic offenders. 16 of them are in custody. There's 2 that have outstanding warrants in our community as we speak. And I want to talk about some recidivism that's happening in the community. I'm going to give some examples at the end of the numbers. I'll run through the numbers really quick. And I have 5 examples of just stuff that we deal with in the community. I think it's really important that the community has an idea of what we deal with on a daily basis as police officers in the community. And certainly when I get to those examples, it's not a criticism at all of our justice system. We have procedures and precedents that we have to work with. I'm not saying it's not frustrating, and you'll see from some of these examples that I give in a bit how that is the case. You'll notice in the news we had a few violent incidents recently in the community, some stabbings. Very, very sad to see those. There have been arrests made in all of those circumstances. We've made a plethora of arrests on many of these property crimes, and I'll get into some examples of some of the frustrations that we're feeling. So I'm going to go straight to the numbers here, and I'm going to plow through them really quickly so I can get into my examples. So I'm going to compare 2016 to 2017, and this is just for the quarter, and I have to stress this is the number of reported events to the detachment. So our total calls for service up a little bit from 2,529 to 2,655. Our violent crime is down from 102 down to 99. And you will see our property crime from 287 up to 345 reported events for the quarter. Specifically in the last 6 weeks, we've seen a dramatic increase in property crime in the community. And like I say, it was 2008 and 9. Those numbers are up around 450 for the quarter. But it's been a long time since those numbers have been realized in the community. Other criminal code offenses are down from 226 down to 172, and I'll get into those types of offenses further on in my numbers here. Drug offenses remains very similar from 28 to 29, and a drug offense is anywhere from trafficking, possession, production, those types of offenses. So that brings our total criminal code from 643 to 645. Our criminal traffic for the quarter, and that's mostly impaired driving, from 38 up to 55. I'll break it down now into crime types. Our violent crime, assaults, from 37 up to 39. Assault with a weapon or bodily harm, and those are the much more serious offenses dealing with assault, from 12 up to 16. Harassment is down from 12 down to 8. Robbery stayed the same at 2. Sex offenses went down from 9 down to 7. Uttering threats remained constant from 20 up to 17. And of the assaults and the serious assaults, there were 25 in 2016 and 25 in 2017 that were domestic in nature. Now we'll get into the property crime, and you'll see the numbers, the dramatic increase in some of these categories. Theft of auto from 5 up to 7. Bike theft from 11 to 20. I suspect that number's a lot higher than that. A lot of people don't report the theft of their bikes, or petty thefts for that matter. Break and enter to businesses from 8 up to 12. Break and enter to residents from 13 up to 19. Break and enter other, and that's sheds, compounds, those types of things, from 6 up to 10. We've had a reduction in mischief to property from 89 down to 79. General thefts from 58 down to 54. Possession of stolen property, that's where we catch people with stolen property. from 6 down to 5. Shoplifting, 28 up to 40, a big increase in shoplifting. You've read some stories in the media, and I have an example to speak to here shortly about that. I'm not going to put a number out there for our community, but I can tell you it's in the hundreds of thousands of dollars lost to shoplifting in this community on an annual basis. It's significant. Theft from vehicle, from 35 up to 45. I won't get into my tirade about that. Well, a little bit. It's just very frustrating that people leave very expensive items in plain view. Most of these, it's an unlocked vehicle. They check the door latch, go in and steal the items. But they will smash a window for a toonie when they need that money to continue on fixing their habits. Fraud from 11 up to 27, significant. When I first ran the numbers, and I haven't previously reported on frauds in the property crime, and the numbers just weren't adding up to me, and I had a look at fraud, and you can see the dramatic increase there. And these aren't the thousands of scams that we get every day via email, and we've all had the phone messages on our cell phone saying if you don't call, you're going to get arrested. These are people that have actually succumbed to a fraud, and it is very much easier for these criminals through social media and advances in technology to defraud people. Other criminal code causing a disturbance, it's down significantly from 120 down to 73. Breach of probation from 38 down to 27. And once again, probation is post-trial. They've been convicted and they're on probation to be good people. Breach of bail from 34 down to 32. Breach of bail is they haven't gone to trial yet and they've been put on conditions to be good people until they go to trial. Intoxicated in public from 109 down to 59. And real quickly, collisions, no fatal collisions for the reporting period both last year and this year. Injury collisions up from 4 to 11, and damage, where there's property damage, from 30 to 31. So I've written down 5 examples I just want to share with the community, and I do apologize, I'll be reading quite a bit from my paper here, but I want to get it right. So here's just an example number 1. These are people in our community that we deal with. Chronic property offender. So this year, up till October 1st, 19 police interactions as a subject of complaint, suspect, or charged. They amassed 20 new charges spread across 13 separate reported incidents. So we can have an incident where there's a couple of charges related to that specific incident. Charges include robbery, theft, fail to comply. So this person's been arrested many times, and they're released back into the community within days, sometimes hours. In one of these scenarios where we brought this person before the courts, they had 11 unendorsed warrants for various criminal offenses and released back into the community. This person remains in our community today, and there's court proceedings pending on this individual. Example number 2 is a chronic property offender. So interestingly, last year, between January and July of 2016, this individual was involved in 5 separate events resulting in 21 charges. And the individual, as a result, received a condition, no-go Port Alberni. You're out of here. Don't come back. You're causing too many problems. So since that no-go, they've been involved in 10 separate reported incidents, amassing 17 new charges, all in Port Alberni. 8 of those incidents, totaling 11 charges, occurred during 2017 of this year. In September of this year, the conditions of no-go Port Alberni were removed from this client, and committed crimes within 48 hours, and several more crimes 10 days later. Currently wanted on warrants in our community and is hiding out. We're currently trying to find this individual. Example number 3, chronic violent and property offender. On March 17th, a chronic offender was released back into the community after serving a jail sentence. At the time of his release, he had been charged over 90 times and 40-plus convictions. Between March and September 11th, 22 police interactions as a subject of complaint, suspect, or charged, arrested multiple times, and released back into the community, sometimes within days or hours. Amassed 18 new charges spread across 8 separate reported incidents. currently identified as a very strong suspect in multiple robberies and thefts, and we do have this person in custody at the moment. A couple little examples as well, just dealing with some mental health stuff. Example number 4, an offender has a mental health and drug addiction problem. Moved to Port Alberni from Comox on October 6th of this year, 2017. The offender was homeless and staying at the sobering center. From October 6th to the 12th, he was involved in 15 police interactions. That's nearly 2 a day. We're short-staffed in the community. This person needs mental health connections. That's the root of these problems. But we're very taxed in this community. We try hard. There's lots of teams in this community that are really dedicated to this, but we can't be there for everyone all the time. The offender had no housing and had a serious mental outburst when using his drugs. 6 of the 15 files, the offender committed criminal offenses. The offenses included fraud, theft, assaulting a police officer, break and enter to a business, and finally a robbery on October 12th. It really does highlight the need for a wraparound approach in our community to deal with these folks. There's someone that came into our community from another community and certainly caused us havoc. And the other one's just a quick example of an offender in our community that for all intent and purposes had a decent life going, ended up in some trouble with the police, and that was back in 2015. As a result, got addicted to drugs, became homeless, and during the last 12 months, this person has had 30 contacts with the police, 13 of which have led to charges being recommended for various theft crimes. In June, the offender was arrested and charged for a theft offense. The offender was in prison for less than 60 days. Between July and October, the offender has been charged on 7 new property crime offenses. Walmart's been the target of this individual, likely over $5,000 worth of goods, and this culminated into the October 5th event, where he was trying to steal items and was confronted by store staff there, and subsequently they were pepper sprayed, and the store had to close down for the evening. So I'm just giving a few examples of what we're dealing with in the community. There's a lot of recidivism, and I can assure you the members are out there giving it their all. We have a very, very good crew of officers here. If we didn't, I wouldn't speak to it. I wouldn't speak badly about them, but I wouldn't speak to it. I'm speaking to it. An amazing crew of members here. We need the community's help. Any community that wants to start a block watch program, I encourage them to contact Corporal Amelia Hayden. We need the eyes and the ears of the community to share with us what they're seeing out there. I follow social media, absolutely I do. I think we all do. I think it's all in our best interest to see what's happening out there. Councillor McClellan said he doesn't, but I'll keep you abreast on the highlights. We as a community need to get together and start being nosy and what's going on in our neighbors, call the police. There's nothing that frustrates me more than to hear about something a few days later, a few weeks later. Did you call the police? Well, no, I didn't want to bother you guys. It's not a bother, you got to call us. It might be that little piece of puzzle that we've been waiting for to finish off what we needed to solve a myriad of crimes. You can see some of these folks commit a lot of crimes. So that's just my plug for the community. Step up, help us. We're out there, and we need your help to have extra eyes and ears out there to tell us what's going on and do our best to hold those folks accountable. But you can see in this, it's deep rooted. These folks need some help. A lot of them, and I've said this before, and I was misquoted in a letter to the editor, and I'll say it again. You know, we deal with a lot of individuals that are suffering from mental health issues. They don't belong in police custody. They don't belong in my jail. They don't belong in the criminal justice system. They need some help. It leads to addictions and other things, and there's some stories in here, you heard them. Previously had a pretty decent life, just like that. Had we been able to get engaged, and I'm not being critical, it's not just this community, it's everywhere, but those types of things, that's not a police matter, and it breaks my heart when we have to arrest those folks for crimes that they're getting into, that they just get a bit of help out there, maybe they're not going to get into that. So anyway, there's my pitch.
So Inspector Hunter, there's you said there's 26 chronic offenders, 16 of them are in custody. So that means 10 of them are incredibly busy if they're chronic. So they're going to be busy with that. But sorry, I'm just going to go on a little bit of a rant here. You and I had a meeting earlier today with one of our business people. You know, Council, we have businesses that have closed because of thefts. We have businesses that have decided to close, it just hasn't happened yet because of thefts. And we have those that are considering closing because of the impact of thefts. This community can't afford to have the closure of businesses because all it does is just drive people away from the community. We want to do just the opposite. So the thefts from cars, from houses, from businesses, would it be fair to say that those thefts wouldn't occur if there was no market for what they're stealing?
There is a definite cycle that occurs, in my experience and many studies. The folks that have no money, that are addicted, they need money. So they will steal things, and there are people in our society that will buy them from them. So they give them money, and then those people refence them and sell them. Some in the drug industry will take goods for drugs, but it's a vicious cycle. Absolutely it is.
Would it also be fair to say that in our community, or in fact any community, that there may be a small number of people that are large purchasers of things that are stolen from private property?
I'm not aware of what the statistics would be on that, Mr. Mayor, but somebody's buying the stuff.
So do we have a target of individuals who we might suspect are doing that sort of thing?
We're aware of many individuals, and I do have to tell you, we have and I don't for a moment believe you're alluding to our pawn shops in the community, but I do want to speak to that. We have a very good relationship with them. We get what we call pawn sheets, all the items that were turned in that week for being pawning. We check them on our stolen list, serial numbers. We have a very good relationship with them. They have a business that they do, and if we ever do locate stolen property, it's not an issue. They work very well with us.
So the solution for these, because it's the why. Why is it happening, and how do we address it? The solution to this can't just be a single focus. It's got to be multi-pronged, because you've talked about all multiple reasons for why the behavior is occurring. But in your opinion, are there some things that the city can do that could assist with this, as well as, you know, other parts of our community that may be able to address some of this? Because clearly, particularly in the last couple of months, it's become a major concern for so many people throughout the community, and frankly, it's not just in one part of the community, it's all over.
We certainly work with all of our partner agencies out there, and our CRT team is outstanding in this community, where we'll actually call them and they'll come right to the police station, and we'll have a client that spent the night in jail, and come on in, this person needs some help, let's get them out of this routine right off the bat. But it really comes down to the drug abuse and the systemic issues with that, and poverty and homelessness. If we could tackle all of those, you can look at cutting your police force by 10 people. But that's a big chunk of meat that I just said there, and I'm also a realist, and I know that's not going to happen overnight. I sure would like it to, though.
So just one last piece before I let Councillor Alberni say what he wants to say. One of the things that we're looking at as a city is significantly increasing the lighting in the alleys, particularly in the uptown area, because a lot of the stuff that occurs happens in the dark. So if it's lit at night, it's less likely to occur.
No, that's an excellent idea, and we talk about that. It's like a scientist trying to grow bacteria in a petri dish. If there's nothing for it to feed on, it's not going to grow. So if we can make an environment that the criminal element isn't able to grow and thrive, I'm all for that. And certainly any businesses that want to connect with the office, do some crime prevention through environmental design, they call it, which lighting is a big part of that, and surveillance and all that sort of stuff. I'd be more than happy to put them in the right direction.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Alberni.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And thank you, Inspector, for the report. You know, my son's bike was stolen a few months ago. We were at the store a couple nights ago, and we watched 3 people run off with who knows what. So there's a lot of crime out there, a lot. And it's not just, like you said, it's not just our community. I have lots of friends in Nanaimo, and they're seeing just huge amounts of crime there as well. I think that the issue I'd like to bring up, you touch on sort of the different facets that have to be addressed in order to try to get a handle on it, and one, of course, is drugs. And in the medical community, as we go through the fentanyl crisis, and you've been very active on that in this community, but on the wider scale, you know, the medical community is starting to talk seriously about things like decriminalization, not just of marijuana, but of all hard drugs, in an effort to bring it out of that criminal element and try to treat it as a medical issue, to try to get a better handle on it. I haven't heard that talk yet. Like, we hear that from, you know, Chief Medical Officer of BC and Chief Medical Officer of Canada, but I haven't heard that yet from law enforcement. And, you know, I don't want to put you on the spot and, you know, ask an opinion now, but it would be interesting to hear, you know, what your kind of assessment of that kind of a direction would be, because, like you said, there's only so many of you, and there's only so much the community can do. It's when you have 10 people who can wreak havoc on a community, and it's all based around a cycle of using drugs or mental addiction or mental health concerns, addiction, homelessness. These are all issues that are bigger than Port Alberni. So I see that as somewhere that we need to probably go as a society to be able to actually get to the root of the problem.
Okay, thank you. Anything else, Council? Sounds like with this, people going into court multiple times, being charged and convicted multiple times, and then literally out on the street again within hours or days. So that's a problem that we need to address with our court system if that's the case.
You know, it's a fine balance. There's precedents and procedures that the courts go through. Society's going to dictate what they want. This is all money, too. You can't just put somebody for shoplifting in jail for 10 years at $100,000. I don't know what the cost is to house a person, but it's very expensive. So there's a balance, no different than the balance in the city here. I could use 20 more officers to just hammer the you-know-what out of this community, but that's not realistic, and it's not going to happen. So there's always a balance out there, and the justice system is finding that balance, but it is frustrating that when we deal with repeat offenders on a consistent basis, for sure.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Silver, do you want to move receipt of this RCMP report? Oh, sorry. Councillor McClellan.
No, it wasn't much of a question. Just say thank you for your report and for your examples. And I guess, you know, you look back into the 1990s when they closed some of the forensic mental institutes. They weren't politely called, I guess, back then. But, you know, when people were put on the streets and they immediately became homeless, they didn't want to live anywhere. They wanted riches and stuff, and we've got a problem since then. So hopefully that the government I know is starting to look at it, and maybe that'll help. And get your provincial counterparts going and stop the drugs coming into town, and then maybe some of this will stop. There's buildings in this town that you and I know they're selling the stuff out steady, and some of them are in the uptown area, and that's why some of the merchants want to go. And so just hopefully we can get a hold of them people.
Okay, Councillor Sylvie.
I'll just make a comment before I read the motion itself. I just want the community to understand is that we no longer, and it's hard to accept, but the date that we start accepting it is the day that we might see a certain change, is the fact that we don't live in a community anymore that you could actually keep your front door open at night and you know, so I just want to send that message out. The solution to this initiative of combating crime and so forth, the essential part of it is having the community getting involved with helping the situation. And this is to report any suspicious activity and so forth. Again, I monitor social media, and there's a lot of this is happening and here's the pictures. Well, the thing is we won't stand for vigilantes, and this has to be done right, and it has to be done through the police. So I really encourage the public to, you know, they're part of the solution, take a stand and report any suspicious activity. So with that said, that the quarterly report from the RCMP providing information about the current departmental operations be received.
Second, Mr. Mayor.
All those in favor? Carried. Thank you, Council. I'm going to declare a recess for 5 minutes until 10 after 9.
And then while you're on recess.
Just got quiet, or you're...
It did. Okay, Council, brings us to Part G, bylaws. From the Director of Development Services, Development Cost Charges Reduction. We've had 3 readings of the bylaw. And Councillor McClellan, you're here. Would you like to make the motion on the bylaw number 4947?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, the Development Cost Charges Reduction Bylaw, bylaw number 4947, be now finally adopted, signed by the Mayor and Clerk, sealed with the corporate seal numbered 4947.
Second, Mr. Mayor.
All those in favor? Carried. And from the City Clerk, we have a report on Business License Regulation Bylaw and bylaw number 4951, page 63. Anything extra that you want to highlight, City Clerk?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. As Council will recall, proposed new business license regulation bylaw was discussed by Committee of the Whole at a meeting on October 16th. Significant discussion, but no specific direction from the Committee of the Whole to Council. But based on the discussion held at that meeting, staff did put in an increase to the fee for medical marijuana facilities and dispensaries, and an increase to $550, up from the previous $220. So that is there for Council's consideration of 3 readings, and if there are any further amendments Council would like to see, then we can certainly do those too.
Okay. Councillor Minions, do you want to move with this process, please?
That the report from the City Clerk dated October 19th, 2017 be received.
I'll second that, Mr. Mayor.
All those in favor? Carried.
That business license regulation bylaw number 4951 be now introduced and read a first time.
I'll second that, Mr. Mayor.
All those in favor? Carried.
That business license regulation bylaw number 4951 be read a second time.
I'll second that one, Mr. Mayor.
Any suggestions for change, Council? This is a good time to do it now for the amounts. Councillor McClellan?
Yeah, I think the change is made, not as far as I'd like it to go with the medical marijuana one, but I think we'll see how that goes, at least unless someone else wants to move it. I'm just looking at the enforcement and penalties. If we can get these fines, can any of them be put on the property if the people do not pay? And if they can't, then what do we have to say in them to change that?
CAO, do you have a response to that? Because I certainly don't know the answer.
Mr. Mayor, I'm going to ask Mr. Smith if he can answer that.
I would certainly have to confirm this, but there's only certain charges that we're allowed to put on property taxes, so we can look into that for council and get back to you. I suspect this is one that is not, but I don't know that for certain, so we'll need to get back to you and find out, is this one of the charges that can be put onto property taxes if unpaid? Some can, some cannot.
Yeah, I understand that there's certain bylaws we have to pass to make it go there, and I think we should look at that. I'm not saying we do it tonight or anything, but it's something to look at.
Okay.
So what you see on some of these enforcement parts in the larger sums, that's when you go through a court action. So to get to those kinds of things, you have to go through a court process to get through that. So the fines themselves and ticketing is a different process. And we'd have to clarify about whether a business license thing, if unpaid, if something like that could go in taxes or not.
Okay, thank you. On the motion then, all those in favor? Carried, thank you.
That business license regulation bylaw number 4951 be read a third time.
I'll second that, Mr. Mayor.
All those in favor? Carried. Then, Council, we have zoning bylaw amendment number 24, 3790 Mears Drive, blue. It's bylaw 4944. We have a report from the dated October 18th from the Director of Developmental Services requesting Council give final adoption to zoning bylaw map amendment number 24. Councillor Paulson, do you want to make that motion, please?
The zoning bylaw map amendment number 24, 3790 Mears Drive, blue. Bylaw number 4944 be now finally adopted, signed by the mayor and clerk, sealed with the corporate seal, and numbered 4944.
I'll second that, Mr. Mayor.
Any discussion, Council? Councillor McClellan?
Yeah, just a question, just because my memory isn't all that good. We discussed this and we had public hearing back in July and August and so on. I'm just wondering, when this passed, did it pass with one or two lots to be divided into?
Well, the zoning would potentially allow for 3 lots.
Well, yeah, 3 or 2 or 3 is what I guess.
Yeah, so the zone that has been applied for, the R3 small lot single family zone, would technically allow 3 residential lots to be done if it can be proven out. One of the things that will have to be done before final subdivision has occurred is a professional geotechnical engineer will have to be hired and a report provided to the approving officer to certify that each of the lots has a safe building site for a residential purpose and that they must take into consideration the existing retaining walls. There's other conditions as well, but that's a big one for this site.
Yeah, I do remember something. Okay, that's where we left it. Thank you.
Okay, on the motion, all those in favor? Carried, thank you. And also from the Director of Development Services, closing of an inactive development file, page 20, from page 71. This is the property up on Bird Street. Sorry, Councillor McClellan, do you want to make that motion, please?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, that all previous readings of the official community plan amendment number 17, 3333 Bird Street, Harris, bylaw number 4889, and zoning map amendment number 9, 3333 Bird Street, Harris, bylaw number 4890 be rescinded, the application denied, and the files closed.
Any questions, Council? All those in favor? Carried. Okay, and then Council, that brings us to correspondence for action. The first item of correspondence, in fact, the only item of correspondence is for an automatic aid agreement. It's on page 73, and that is between the City of Port Alberni, the Regional District of Alberni-Clayoquot, and the Cherry Creek Waterworks District to be considered by Council. There is an ACRD board report attached. Council wish any clarification on any of this? Yeah, I know I have a question. Councillor McClement.
Yeah, I think it's good that we have the automatic aid. The way I read this, and I could be wrong, is if there's a structure fire that automatically, because it's automatic, the other departments respond. And that's something that helps the city and helps the other regions. In fact, I recall Director Cody from Sprout Lake being here not too long ago telling us to please keep your professional fire department because they sure help us a lot. She didn't mention they weren't paying anything towards it, but that's okay, I guess. Anyway, I would just like, the only comment I'd like to make is we've been on this conversation for a long time, and I would like to see one fire department in the Alberni Valley. I know I've talked to firemen, and some agree with me and some don't, and that's fair. But we have a professional fire department. They have, in their districts, got volunteers. I think they can work together and make one big fire department. And I know there's a lot of prejudice has got to go, but I believe that can work.
I believe we invited her to join the city and she could help pay for the service, but she didn't take us up on that offer.
Yeah, I did invite her.
Yeah. CAO, just my one and only question on this is there an extraordinary cost to the city for this automatic aid agreement?
Mr. Mayor, I would say that there's not an extraordinary cost to the city. In most years since automatic aid has been in existence, my recollection is 1 to 2 responses outside of the city per year. This year has been an anomaly. We've had, I believe, 5 or 6 already this year as a result of some set fires in the district. But I would say even then there's not an extraordinary cost, and there's a tremendous benefit coming back to the city. In fact, council might recall that our fire underrators rating went from a 4 to a 3, which is an incredible rating to have a 3 out of 10, lower number being better. And it went from 4 to a 3 largely because of our automatic aid. So we derive a significant benefit from automatic aid, and it doesn't cost us very much at all. I think it's well compensated.
So does this mean some of the areas of Cherry Creek that are difficult for the Cherry Creek Volunteer Fire Department to service will now be able to expect aid from the City Fire Department first, with backup from the Cherry Creek Fire Department? Is that in effect what will happen?
It means that all areas of Cherry Creek and Beaver Creek and Sprout Lake that have fire protection also benefit from responses from the city and the other departments as well. I wouldn't want to comment on whether any one department was struggling to service an area or not, but I think we're all better together.
Aren't the residents of the Franklin River Road part of Cherry Creek?
They're part of Cherry Creek electoral area, not part of Cherry Creek Improvement District. So they don't receive Cherry Creek fire protection.
Okay. Thank you. Councillor Alberni?
Thank you. Like Councillor McClement, I think it's a great, it's good that we have this automatic aid agreement. I think it's been clear over the past little while that it's been beneficial to us, and I do think that there's an opportunity here in the future maybe that this is a step towards having a one fire department for the whole valley, which would make a lot of sense. But putting that aside, the one part in the agreement that I wasn't aware of that I thought was interesting was sort of the netting of benefits and costs at the end of the year between two departments, or the 4 departments coming together and figuring out sort of what costs and payments and whatnot happened over the year. Could you explain that at all, just to get a better idea of that? I just thought that was interesting.
Mr. Mayor, I haven't touched this agreement for a number of years, and I'm not prepared to respond to the question. I can have Chief Gilday bring an answer at a future meeting.
That'd be great. Thanks.
Okay, Councillor Sauvé, are you able to make this motion?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. That the City of Port Alberni enter into an automatic aid agreement as presented with the Alberni-Clayoquot Regional District and Cherry Creek Waterworks District, and that the mayor and clerk be authorized to enter into the agreement on behalf of the City of Port Alberni.
Is there a seconder?
Second.
All those in favor? Carried. Thank you. Council, this brings us to proclamations, and it's concerning the Information Systems Audit and Control Association. We have an email from them dated October 8th requesting that January 29th to February 9th be proclaimed as BC Aware Days. Councillor Councillor Washington, are you prepared to make that motion?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. That the email dated October 8, 2017 from the Informational System Audit and Control Association requesting that January 29 to February 9, 2018 be proclaimed as BC Aware Days in Port Alberni be received and the week proclaimed as requested.
There's a seconder?
Second, Mr.
All those in favor? Carried. Thank you. And we have informational correspondence. City Clerk?
Several items, Mr. Mayor. An invitation to mayor, councillors, area directors and senior staff from the Community Energy Association, inviting to join them at the Climate Leadership Institute from November 1st to 3rd in Richmond. UBCM, Councillor Paulson's summary of the conference held recently in Vancouver. School District 70 has provided a letter thanking the city for the sidewalk improvements in front of ADSS and AW Neil schools. City of Victoria has provided a copy of a letter from the Mayor with a resolution recently approved regarding maintaining and improving the intercity bus service. Minister of Environment and Climate Change Strategy follows up on the meeting with Council at the recent UBCM convention. Alberni Valley Museum and Heritage Commission has provided the minutes of their September 6th meeting, and from the Seniors Advisory Committee, the minutes of their October 12th meeting.
Council wish to extract anything from any of those correspondence? Councillor McClellan and Councillor Alamaner?
Yeah, I'd just like to thank Councillor Polson for his report on the UBCM. I did. And you know, I think it's something that's covered well, and Councillor Alberni has also put in a report. We probably all should have. When I heard that Councillor Polson was, I thought he'll cover it for me, and he's done very well. Thank you.
Councillor Alamaner.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just want to pull out on the UBCM, the letter from the Minister of Environment, Climate Change Strategy. It was good to see them respond to the meeting we had around mitigation of sea level rise and climate action. So that's good to see. And kind of on that note, I saw in the news today that the government put out their new climate action team, or that's not the panel, I think it is. It's a review panel. And it included Chief of the New Charles North, Judith Sayers, and the Mayor of Tofino, Josie Osborne, as well as a bunch of other people around the province and industry leaders. So it's good to see them. You know, they appear to be taking the climate file very seriously. So that was good to see. And then the other one I just wanted to mention was the City of Victoria's letter on intercity bus service. They're advocating for Greyhound or other intercity services to not be curtailed because they are critical for our communities, but also advocating for more interregion transportation with BC Transit. So that's going to be, I think, more and more critical as time goes on, and it relates to climate change as well.
Thank you. Anything else, Council? Just one comment. We have the chair of the school district sitting here, and just to pass on, students done a great job of influencing council's decisions, particularly when it comes to safety. So did a great job, and we were. It was good to be able to dedicate those two pathways. I'm wondering, Councillor Alamaner, would you like to move receipt of these letters?
That information correspondence items numbered 1 through 7 be received and filed.
Seconder?
Second that, Mr. Mayor.
All in favor? Carried. Okay, there is no report from in camera, and that brings us to council reports. The first one is the mayor's report. First thing I'd like to say, council, is to acknowledge that we have a member of our Of our education community, a member of our community, Mr. Doug Chase, has received a significant recognition. In the last couple of weeks, he's been voted into an International Softball Baseball Hall of Fame. He was inducted into the Canadian Softball Hall of Fame in 2012. He also happened to be the coach of the women's softball team playing in the Sydney Olympics in 2000. He's had many awards and many achievements. But for us as a community, it's really something to have someone, a member of our community, someone who was born here, works here, raised his family here, achieve such an incredible honor. So I want to recognize Doug Chase for this recognition. I'm sure there will be more to come, but it is really something for him and by extension for the rest of the community. Just a little bit of information in terms of what I've been doing. As I said, October the 11th, there was a dedication of the Neil walking path and safety improvements along Compton Road there. And thank you to Councillor McClement and Councillor Sauvé for participating in that. Also on October the 11th, I received a recognition from the Baha'i Assembly for leadership in our community, so it was great to receive that. October the 12th, I went to the open house at the Nanaimo Airport. It's amazing to see the change in that airport just in the last 12 months, but also in the last 5 years, of course. Significant improvements in terms of length and in terms of firefighting capabilities, and significant increase in the amount of economic activity sparked by that airport. October 17th, I was at the Kinsman Installation of Officers. It's always a great event. I was there last year as well, and perhaps it was 2 years ago, I forget. But, and thank you for Councillor Sauvé for also participating in that. October the 19th, I was at the Alberni Valley Learning Council. It's good to be a member of that along with Councillor Paulson. They do great work, and there's tremendous events happening, activity happening in our area pertaining to education. And then the last thing, October 21st, I had an opportunity to go to the Bulldogs game, but the reason I mention it is because I took along members of our two refugee families, one who's a young boy from Aleppo, and the other two, and they become fast friends. It's a family from Mosul, and even though they're from two different countries, they're from the same part of the world. Both families speak Arabic, and they've, like I said, they're similar age. They've become great friends, great family supports for one another. But none of it would be possible if it wasn't for the community support for these two families. So Bulldogs did a tremendous job of recognizing them and giving them little treats and making them feel welcome.
Go Dogs Go is the same in any language.
Yeah, that's right. So they were right into it. They'd never been to a hockey game before, and this was an amazing opportunity for them. Council, that's my report. I move acceptance of my report. Second. All in favor? Carried. Thank you. And from the regional district, Councillor McClement?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, it's a fairly brief report this time. At the last meeting, we passed a new lease agreement with the Coulson Air Crane for the airport, and we did a few other things. There was another motion regarding forestry on the far side of the airport that the Upachesset are considering logging to take it down so that we could have some of the height restrictions out of the way. And I think the rest of the airport is still, a lot of that stuff is still in camera, unfortunately, and I'm hoping we can get it out real quick so we can report on it. It's not all exciting anymore, but we want that airport finished. It's still got a bit of time to go. So that is my report, Mr. Mayor. I move acceptance of report. I'm sorry.
All in favor? Carried. Thank you, Councillor McClement. Brings us to councillors' reports. Let's start with Councillor Washington.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. October 14th, attended the Kiwanis/Silent Festival Volunteer Appreciation Dinner, and on behalf of the city was honored to receive a check from the Kiwanis Club of Port Alberni for $60,000. This money comes from the Federated Cooperative Community Spaces Program and, of course, the Kiwanis Canadian Foundation and the club itself. So the $60,000 to the city to go towards Canal Waterfront Park to complete Phase 1, which you spoke about earlier about the gazebo, the picnic area, and to add the binocular telescope unit later on. So hopefully with that money plus the in-kind of the city, that makes it about a $90,000 project for Phase 1. So we're pretty excited to be a big part of that. And I'd like to thank Kiwanis and Port Alberni for supporting the Salmon Festival, because that's where that kind of money comes from. October 16th, Committee of the Whole meeting, and October 19th, Salmon Festival meeting, just getting our demographics and stuff together so that we can get something in the newspaper to see where people came from and find out where we can reach further for next year. And that's my report.
Thank you. And Councillor Alberni?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I didn't have any committee meetings this past little break, so nothing from there. But the one thing I do want to mention is this week I'll be going to the Vancouver Island Economic Alliance Summit conference, which is in Nanaimo for 2 days this week, which Council graciously paid for the registration for that in June. So I'll be reporting back on that at the next council meeting. It's always a really good event. If people aren't familiar with it, it's viea.ca. You can get lots of information there. There's sessions on poverty, film industry, Aboriginal business development, guest speakers. The Premier will be addressing the conference on Wednesday. So it'll be very good, and I look forward to reporting back to council.
Thank you, Councillor Alberni. Councillor Minions?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Tonight I'm going to use my council report to apologize to Tim and Davina. Partially. I also have a council report. Any criticism in my comments at our last meeting was not meant to be directed at staff. It came from a place of frustration with some at times how we respond to the public. So not meant to be directed at you guys. Our Committee of the Whole meeting is the first thing I want to report on. I think in general, I really want to thank Council for moving forward with that, because I think that that was maybe the most open dialogue that we've ever had at a Council meeting, and I really enjoyed it. And I think actually I talked to quite a few people afterwards. A lot of people said don't want more meetings, but I think everybody really agreed that it was a positive thing for our council to discuss without having to have a vote at the end. So thank you to council for moving forward with that. I had a Civic Affairs Committee meeting actually the next morning. And there was a lot of discussion about that Committee of the Whole and some really positive comments back about it. They actually asked me to pass that on to council, that they really enjoyed, from the Chamber's perspective, being able to come and interact in that way as well. And they really appreciated the comments of Jim Del Rio, who was very positive about some of the things that council has done and the Chamber has worked on over the last year. So just a good forum for the public to communicate. And lastly, I had a committee meeting for Coldest Night of the Year, which was an event that council and a lot of city staff and community members participated in last year. We raised $25,000 last year for a cause, and that went towards helping fund shortfalls for the Transition House, which is a facility where women and families fleeing abusive situations go when they're in need of somewhere to stay. So it's a really important facility in our community, and we were able to keep that open largely because of a lot of support from other places, but those funds went towards that. So a really important event in the community. It's coming up again this year, February 24th. So mark your calendars and get ready to put your teams in, hopefully. And you'll be hearing more about that over the next few months as we start to organize the event some more. And that's my report.
We've all kept our toques, so we're probably good to go.
There'll be lots more toques.
Okay. Councillor Paulson.
On October 18th, we had an advisory traffic committee meeting On October 19th, I actually attended a workshop at SD70's offices, and it was our kids, student perceptions of health and well-being, and it was really the middle school development indicator that was discussed, and topics discussed there were physical health and well-being, connectedness with parents, personal acknowledgments, those sorts of things, after school time, social and emotional development, and overall school experiences. And once again, I really want to thank Greg Smith and School District 70 and Pam for hosting that workshop. It was very enlightening for me, not being involved in the education system. So thank you very much for that. And that same afternoon, attended the Alberni Valley Learning Council with the mayor, and that's my report.
Thank you. Councillor Sobey.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. A lot of stuff you already mentioned that I attended with you. I won't repeat myself. So on the 12th of October, we had the Seniors Advisory Committee. Again, the minutes are in the package. We're working right now with Alberni Clayoquot Health Network in creating a certain seniors service sector within the Alberni Valley. The BC Summit is coming up next week for the project that the city has endorsed with Seniors Raising the Profile Project. This is to send a strong message to the province in being able to assist our seniors in our communities. On the 17th of October, Kidsman for the installation of the new executive board. So thank you very much for them for the invite. Also, I attended the Citizens on Patrol, which is a branch from the RCMP. It's community members volunteering to patrol our streets and being the eyes and the ears for the police, as the inspector explained tonight. I was elected president, so I'll be taking up that role within the community. Again, we're looking for volunteers and to contact the Community Policing Office at 778-421-3992. And that's it for my report, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. And Councillor McLennan.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The only thing that I can add is that I did attend a Community Forest Board meeting since the last meeting, and they are working on looking to find a way to increase the cut for the community forest, and have already made some contacts with the ministry. And with that, I would like to move the acceptance of all these wonderful reports by these nice councillors.
I'll second it.
All those in favor? Thank you, Councillor McClement. I don't believe there's any new business. Question period. This is an opportunity for public and press to ask questions for Mayor and Council. And seeing none, motion to adjourn.
So moved, Mr. Mayor. Second.
All in favor? Carried. Thank you, Council.